So hello everybody and welcome back. So it's been a while since we've worked on the cockpit. I'm here to give you an update. So I've been doing a lot of 3D printing and it's made a lot of interesting results. So one of the first things that I worked on is this little guy, which is actually the left and right MFDs. They have fully functioning buttons. Well, they will fully function. These are actual buttons. In between that little layer, focus, and you can kind of see it. There are little tiny pins up there. These are actual twisty knobs. You can actually twist, and these will be wired up so that we can have two MFDs that actually work, that we can hit the buttons. But these take a long time to prototype, so I have a nice pile of them now. There's 3 of the prototypes. There are many more. These were too small. As you can see, those were too small. They just didn't have the right dimensions. This one was big enough, but I was kind of experimenting with how I was going to have these pieces go in. This is actually the middle layer that's in there. I don't know how you can see it, but there's 2 layers in there sandwiching the buttons, and they fit in with these little pins. If you guys have a better way of doing that, let me know, but they actually hold pretty well. I've got a really good tactile feeling, and that's what this inside looks like. I ran out of filament on that section and switched to another one, but they're pretty thin. They are 1/10 of an inch, but they've got these little tabs. They go in the little holes, so when you put it in there, it essentially pops in and is relatively permanent, but this takes a long time to prototype, unfortunately, and with 3D printing, it's just a massive amount of time. From what I've kind of guessed at the moment, I'm looking a couple hundred up to maybe 1,000 or more hours of 3D printing in prototyping, actually making the stuff, and yeah, so these are going to take a while to do, because I think these are 15 to 20 hours a piece just to print the test ones, and I might have to make another revision of this, which would not be super fun, but if I do, I've got a pretty good base. I've got all the CAD models and everything else now, so all I have to do is edit them since I made them. So that is one of the pieces I've been working on. Second piece that I've been working on was called a Zeus Rail. So that's the rails that the actual F-18s, F-14s, pretty much everything in aviation uses them. I'll put an image up here, over here, somewhere on the screen. But essentially they are quarter twist fasteners. So you put your piece down, you put the fastener in there, and it's a quarter twist. Now, they are very nice, but they're a little bigger than an M4 screw. So, of course, I had to prototype it. This, which you can't really see, is a Zeus Rail, which is literally a hole in the top, hole in the side to kind of screw it to a wall or a faceplate or something, and that little rail on the inside is actually what the fastener goes into. So it goes in that small little tiny gap between the side and the hole, and it's essentially a quarter turn. I'll put a picture of it on the screen so you guys can see what those fasteners look like. So I managed to get the rail correct, but I can't get the fastener with enough strength. I'm printing them out of PLA. I might have better luck with ABS or Teflon, nylon, or pretty most of the other materials. The only problem is that there's just so little material there. Like, that's my finger for reference, and these are tiny. So there is probably 1/10, maybe 1/2 of a 1/10 of an inch of space between the rail and the outside, and it has to turn and lock in. So even if I was able to print the fasteners for this and make it work, they wouldn't be very strong, which is the problem with it. And the actual fasteners are about $10 a piece. There are somewhere in the neighborhood of, I believe it's 30 to 50 fasteners. So just in that's $500 in fasteners, and I'm trying to make this for relatively cheap. So this was the first prototype. this one went out the window. So I printed a second prototype and modified it with threaded holes for an M4 screw. Now, it was the one screw that I didn't have downstairs. It's the only screw that I needed but didn't have at that time, and I was kind of too lazy to go to the hardware store since I'd already gone to get some metal and some other stuff. So I 3D printed my own little M4 screws. That's one of the reasons I absolutely love 3D printing, because it's quite literally 3D printed those, 3D printed these, and they screw right in. Now, this is kind of important because this is what everything's going to attach to. So if you look on the left side or the right side, essentially you have 2 or more rails, and then you put your panel on those. You put some, I'm going to put some plywood underneath here, screw these into plywood, so there's going to be probably a 15-inch tall piece of plywood over here. That's going to make my left panel and my right panel, but we're starting with the left. But the panels also take a long time to 3D print. So I currently have this. If you guys know what this is, pause now, put it in the comments. This is number 1, this is number 2. What panels in the F-18 do you think these are? Okay, if you guessed correctly, well, you're about to find out. So this one is the, my button's falling out. So back one is the comm panel, front one is the rudder trim and reset switch. This is the FCS bit switch, and we don't use this one a whole lot, so I don't remember what it is right now. I don't know if you guys can see it. You can. There's a hexagonal pattern that I 3D printed in there. They are about, the bottom is 2/8 or 1/8 of an inch. The top is 2/8 of an inch, and it's just too tall for my little switches. They're workable, but it's just a little too tall. It's also a good way to cut down on time by making this a third shorter. So that helps. But I've got 4 of my M4 converted Zeus Rails and my little custom button. And if you look on the back side, these are the same kind of pins that I use for the MFDs. So I've got the same kind of button back here, and I just 3D printed a little fastener and a button, and I can print, or I can push that button. It's not quite as nice of a tactile feel, so I'm going to do some more modifications on that. I have to 3D print all of this, except for the rails, because these are both too large. They're too thick. So this probably 20 hours worth of printing of these 2 modules need to be reprinted. But it was a very good prototype test, because it showed me that my M4 screws that I 3D printed work quite well, actually. It told me a lot about how the switches are going to go in, what sizes they need to be. So these are going to get updated, reprinted, and you guys will probably see some of those in the next video, depending on where I go from here. Hopefully it's going. But while printing some more modules, there was a problem. So my 3D printer essentially ate itself. It printed the first module, and I was printing 2 at once overnight. This one is the correct thickness. It's only 2/8 inch thick. These are much better. I can actually put the nuts on to keep them in place. This is my APU start panel. I've got a little hole for the APU light, and then these little switches. This is APU switch, and I'm not sure we've ever used, oh, that's the crank switch, left and right. But unfortunately, this was the only piece I got out of that double print. I had the refueling panel, which goes just above this guy right here. The refueling panel was supposed to print next, and somehow the 3D printer decided to print too close to the bed, and it actually wrapped the material, or it wrapped the plastic around the nozzle. I don't know if you guys know this, but that's really hard to fix. So the printer ate itself, and I'll have some pictures up here. But there was no real way to recover from that easily. I essentially had to buy a new head, a new nozzle. All the material was a loss, but that's not too bad because these guys cost like pennies to print. It's just a lot of time, and it's a pretty massive time investment, which is why I haven't put up a video in so long, because it takes quite a bit of time to design those, then a couple hours to actually prototype them, get all my measurements correct, since 3D printers don't actually print what you designed. They print a little sloppy, so to say. So that's been interesting to say the least. But with all the fun that's been going on and all the failures that this has been having, it's just taken a lot of time, and I've been trying to go as quick as I can, but it's, like I said, it's going to take some time. I'm working on them. I'm going to try doing some acrylic. I've seen a lot of people that make these little panels out of acrylic, and if I can do that, it would be great. The problem is acrylic is magnitudes more expensive. It's not that expensive. It's a couple dollars per sheet. So for the entire cockpit, for the left and the right panels, it might cost something on the order of, I don't know, $40, $50 in materials. But it's just one more thing to experiment with, so that's probably going to be in the next video. I want to play with the acrylic, see how it turns out. It's going to take a lot less time to do acrylic, since it's just cut it out, drill some holes, and call it good, whereas 3D printing is adding everything, so that will cut down on time. It will make the cost go significantly up. Like, this entire thing cost me maybe 30 cents to print, which is a very cheap prototyping material. And I can set it up. I hit go and it prints on the machine, go take a nap, do something, because a lot of these prints are 10 plus hours, so prototyping takes a long time, but printing the actual final kind of production level stuff takes even longer. So yeah, there's kind of a quick update. There's some of the things I've been working on. I have a whole lot of buttons, switches. I've been playing with the Arduino. I'll go grab that. Okay, so moving into kind of a new segment, I have a couple of things that I'm doing on the electronic side at the same time. So I have this nicely packaged stuff because I was taking it with me while I was doing some traveling. I am currently using an Arduino Mega with stuff falling off. So this is my little Arduino Mega. Nice and simple. And one way to do this is to plug everything in, but I have so many inputs that I need to essentially make a matrix or a couple of other ways to get, honestly, a couple hundred inputs or more into this little board. Now this has, if I remember correctly, 64 inputs. Sorry for all the noise. This has roughly 64 inputs. I need on the order of 400 to 500 inputs. So one way that I'm able to do that is by boards like this, which are Arduino shields, and essentially I'm going to be able to use this as a matrix and turn certain sets high and low in a specific order, and I can go into the specifics later when I actually get into going over some of the code and actually getting some of this working. But I can essentially turn this board into a little matrix and take that off, plug that board into this Arduino, and have it turn into essentially 700 or more inputs. So that will satisfy everything I need. It's just going to be a lot of logic behind it. So I'll have one board, one USB for the entire cockpit, minus the external controls, so things like the thrustmaster, the HOTAS, the rudder pedals, all those guys you're going to have to run off their own just because I don't have a way to interface them with this. I could do some USB controllers, convert them to actual inputs, but I don't really want to be adding more complexity where I don't need to. Eventually, when I make my own stick rudder pedals and everything else, I will be integrating them into here, but not right now. And then I figured I might as well grab out some of these. These are my rotator switches. They're multi-position. They actually click into a position. There's different numbers of them, different sizes, etc. There are a whole lot of types of switches. Anything from on-off to having a middle position to having a toggle and a fixed up versus toggle and toggle. There are a lot of different switches in these cockpits, and there are a lot of different kinds of rotor configurations. And yeah, these are my absolute favorite because you actually pull up and over the gate. Hard to do in the baggie. Alright, here's my little prototype guy that lets me play with the switches. that is a 2-position switch, on off. This is my 2-position pull up and over. It is the most amusing thing to play with. Hard to see, but... And then this guy in the back has a static position, a middle position, and a toggleable back position. But we're going to get into all the wiring and stuff in a later video, because that is quite literally an entire video in itself of how this is going to be wired, why it's going to be wired the way it is. And quite honestly, I haven't figured out quite how I want to do that yet, because I could make it modular so that, say if one of you guys wanted to buy just one piece like this, I could just have a pin out, you could have just a controller board, and all you do is plug it in and call that good, which would be super neat. It would make things very modular, very easy. Say a button goes out in a year, or next week, or anything, and say it's not wired correctly, any of the whole host of problems, well, I can replace just this module. Instead of cutting wires and soldering new ones in, I can literally just make a switch, or a plug, and that's going to probably be the optimal solution, which is probably the route that I'm going down, but I haven't prototyped it yet, since this is actually the first module that I could wire up and actually run, but I have nowhere to mount it and everything else. So building the APU panel is kind of a nice to have, but I need the rest of the cockpit first, and that depends very heavily on getting this left module done, because this is where I'm going to attach my 1/4-inch plywood, might be 1/8 inch plywood, and this is going to quite literally hold this off the ground so that I can reach over, toggle my switches, hit the buttons as I need to, reset trim, mess with comms, whatever I like. All that stuff is going to be over here, but it all needs to be off the ground. This is actually strong enough that I'm going to be able to put the Thrustmaster HOTAS on here. I haven't tested to see if I can screw it in. That would be really neat. But yeah, so that's kind of a progress update on all the things that I've been working on. It's kind of why it's been so quiet. I'll try and get some more videos out on this actual build a little more frequently. I know it's kind of hard to wait 2 months just to get an update and not have anything tangible that I can actually fly with, which is kind of driving me nuts. I was really hoping to have this panel done, because just this, if these were completely done and 3D printed, I could attach the plywood and call it good. I can start wiring this panel if it was done to spec and if it was kind of the final production. So that, I wish it worked, but it just barely doesn't. Anyways, I might be able to modify that one and use it. If I can, we'll start wiring on it and we'll see where it goes, or I'll be able to 3D print it. But the explosion of the 3D printer, all the fixes that I've needed to do, just one cascading failure on it after another. It's a challenge of 3D printing. It makes things exciting to say the least, but it also makes things interesting. It is a very cheap hobby in the grand scheme of things. This entire cockpit in all the 3D printing world and the prototyping has cost me maybe $1. So despite the fact that it takes a long time to print, it is very economical, and this is something that you guys could do at home. Or it might be something that if you guys are actually interested in ordering parts, you might be able to, that might be an option. If there's enough interest, I might set up either a small store or something else where you can buy all the panels once I get them done, and you'll be able to play with them and have your own, which honestly to me that would be neat, because unless you guys know of any that are not in the realm of $35,000, this is pretty much the only way to get something. You have to build and prototype it all yourself. So having either plans, which I can't find either, nobody has really released CAD plans on it. You have to design and build the entire thing yourself, which is what I'm currently doing, and I kind of want to make up that deficit. This community is insane. It's gigantic. There are so many people that love flying. There are virtual squadrons. DCS is kind of nuts on its own. The number of squadrons out there is insane, and you don't have to fly with everybody else. You can just fly on your own. You can go have fun in a jet. You can go have fun with combat. You can do anything you like in DCS, but it's very hard to bring things into reality. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do here, If you guys are interested in either ordering some of the parts once they actually reach a kind of production level, definitely let me know down in the comments, and I will see if I can do something to make that a reality. And eventually it might just be that I release the CAD files and everybody can go 3D print their own or cut their stuff out of acrylic, or realistically, I don't know. So we'll see where it goes. Definitely let me know in the comments what you guys are looking forward to. If there's any specific sections that you want me to work on, it might not be in the next video, but I will definitely be looking for suggestions if there's something explicitly that you want to see. The gear and the hook handles, those are definitely high priorities. Those are things that I really want to get going. I am going to try and attach them to these, so it's going to actually screw into the rails so that you can have this freestanding and have the panel up here. You don't actually have to have it attached to a front panel or anything like that. So I'm going to do my best to make it work with these, which is why this has been the first thing that I've done. But now that I have these rails and I have kind of a spacer, I can work from here on the front panels. So other than the gear and the hook levers, is there any real specific sections of the cockpit you guys are interested in that I might either want to hop over and start playing with soon, or yeah? So definitely let me know what you're interested in, what you're looking forward to, if there's any sections that you would like to see, or anything that you find interesting, just leave it in the comment section below. I do read every comment so far. I can't guarantee that I will in the future, depending on if the channel grows and expands. But definitely like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next cockpit video, because I think it's going to be an exciting one. I'm going to hopefully have something actually working and running, which would be neat. So let me know what you guys think, and we will see you in the next video.